Howdy, Mike McCoy here. Today I'm going to tell you a little story about the worst logging job we ever had. And it was a dandy. I hadn't been logging long at all. I was green as grass, didn't know what I was doing. And this old guy I was logging for was just a sight. He was one of these people who kept saying, now if you'll do this job, the next one will be good. Said, you'll really do good on that. If you'll just do this job for me, the next one will be good. And he had this job, and the guy that started it actually died. He got cancer and died. And he was a good old boy. I knew him, not really well, but I did know him. And he got sick, and he went back and forth. He was going to finish the job. He really wanted to finish the job, and time just run out for him. Well, that job probably been a setting for 6 months or longer, and simply because nobody would do it. Well, I finished up my little old job, and the guys working for us said, if you'll just finish that job for me, said, I'll make it up on the next. And said, it ain't a bad job, said, it's nearly done, said, they've cut all the hard timber, and the only thing left to cut's easy, and just shot me a line of shit a mile long. So I go over there to it, and I had logged a little bit over in that area, and it wasn't bad logging, it wasn't bad rocking, it wasn't bad steep. So I just took for granted this would be like that. Well, over here we went. I agreed to do it, and we moved in there, and the log yard was right up against the house. I mean, within feet of the house. And all that rotten bark and stuff, when we started bringing logs in there, it stunk to high heaven. For it was kind of a wet spot anyway, and I'm sure that the people living there didn't like it. And they was renters, and it was just old tar paper shacks, all it was. And the woman that lived there was just as sweet as she could be. And her husband, he was a nice guy, but he was a raging alcoholic. If it was past 12 o'clock of the day, he was usually drunk. And he wasn't a real nice drunk. You know, you could just stand your ground with him and be all right, but you could tell he had a short fuse when he was drinking. But we get there and start logging, or start the job, and I immediately seen it. They'd fronted that whole job. The only timber that was there was on top of the mountain, and it was just scraggy, rough stuff, just barely worth getting. And the only reason the old man was getting it is he had paid for it, and he know, you know, if he got it, that's just free money as far as he's concerned. So I tried to get up on top of the mountain with the dozer pretty much all day the first day, and I finally got up there by going around to the, facing the job of going around to the right hand side. And the way the land laid, it was really narrow at the bottom. At the bottom, I doubt it was 500 foot. And it went plumb to the top of the mountain, and it kind of spread out up the top of the mountain. Well, I finally get me a decent road to the top of the mountain where I can get back up there with the dozer. So I take the dozer to the top of the mountain, and I go over to the other side, which would be the left side of facing it. And I start down through there just to make it a skid road, for I didn't care how steep it was, for all I was going to use it for was to skid logs down, and skidding with the dozer, the steeper the better. So I'm going down through there, and it was old mountain ivies and laurel bushes. I had a pile of brush in front of that dozer, at least 10 foot high. It's just as thick as the hair on a dog's back. And I'm going down through there at a pretty good clip. And all of a sudden, all I see is blue sky. And instinctively, I jerked the blade up. And that kept me from turning end over end. For I walked that dozer off a rock cliff. And it wasn't a real high rock cliff, it was about 10 foot high. And all that brush cushioned it, so it didn't hurt nothing other than just scaring me half to death. And when I picked the blade up, the blade kept it from going end over end. Well, come on down the mountain, and figured out how to get back down to the where the log landing was and everything, and we started logging. And the timber wasn't really bad, but it wasn't really good. It didn't scale for shit because they wasn't no big timber. If they cut every big tree there. And we worked for probably a week, maybe two. And our log landing right there where you come off the mountain to it was just a pure mud hole. It was at least 2 foot deep, this muck is all it was, and stunk to high heaven. And it was so tight in there, you had to have a dozer to push the logs up to you. That little old log loader I had was a G Prentice. Now, you have to be kind of old to know what a G Prentice is, but it was a G Prentice with a short barrel. They made them with a long barrel and short barrel. The long barrels wasn't worth 2 cents and the short barrels wasn't worth nothing. And it worked with the rack and pinions the way the thing swung. Well, I was up there loading the truck, and there's an old boy that worked for me. His name was Victor. Good old boy, but he knowed absolutely nothing about logging. He was as green as grass, and he'd try, but he just didn't know. Well, I needed about 2 more logs pushed over me to finish that load on that truck. And I said, can you get on that dozer and just push 2 logs over for me? And he said, I believe he can. So he got on the dozer, and there's a little 450 that had a power shift on it. It wasn't nothing complicated at all. And just as he started pushing them logs over, there was a chunk about that long and about that big around caught in that track. And it rolled that track off of that just like you jacked it off front of it. That dozer sat in a foot of this soupy mud that smelled like something dead with the track off of it. Well, he got the logs over far enough to me to where I could load them, so I finished loading the truck. And we went down there, and that little old 450 dozer, the only way you could put the track back on it was to break it. That's the only way it would go back. And I finally got it to where the pin, the drive-out pin, is on top. And we got it and got the track put on, got it put back together and pumped back out, but both of us was just as muddy as hogs. We finally got done. I ain't never been as aggravated in all my life. Well, started back logging again, and we was about 2/3, 3/4 done. We was almost done with that job. And I was loading, and I picked up a little old black oak that was probably 20 inches, maybe, something like that. And as I come up with it, that rack, which is right under the seat and all that, broke loose. And it just pulled it out of gear. And when it did, that thing come around, and the lady that lived there was hanging out clothes. And that log took a pillowcase out of her hand as it come back around, scared her to death. She was screaming like she had been killed. I just knowed I'd hit her. That's probably as bad scared as I've ever been. And she was a hollering and a squalling. It was about 2 o'clock one day, and her husband was drunk as a skunk. Now the house he come with a .22 pistol in his hand, and I just knowed that man's going to shoot me. For just about 5 minutes there, I wanted to give 2 cents for me, for I just knowed he was going to shoot me. And I finally got it through his head that the knuckle boom had broke, that I hadn't just done that. That it had physically broke. I had to take him over there and show him. He said, you don't mess with my wife like that. I'll blow your damn head off. And I thought, oh my God. But when he seen it was broke, he kind of calmed down. And we come up there and we welded on that thing for the next 2 days probably, trying to get it patched back up. And I didn't own the loader. The old guy I was logging for owned the loader. And it was a piece of crap. Well, we got the loader patched back up. And there was an old stiff boom skidder there that the guy that had died had been using. And I asked the old guy that had the sawmill, I said, what are you going to do about that old stiff boom skidder? I said, them people want it moved too. And he said, you can just have it if you want it. And I took it to my place and loaded several loads of logs with it. Things as dangerous as a cock gun, but it had a Sears and Roebuck Chevrolet power unit on it. It had the tag, it said Sears and Roebuck on it, and it was old 6-cylinder Chevrolet. But it worked, you know, and we could load a tandem load of logs in 18 minutes. We timed it one time. But anyway, getting back to that job, it was just, it didn't pay nothing. And I wasn't been scared that bad when I first, because I thought I might have hit that woman. Then I thought, oh, man's gonna shoot me. And I know that they was glad to see us gone. For while there's office mess around that house you ever seen in your life. I wouldn't do my renter that way. I absolutely would not do my renter that way. We was logging within probably 10 feet of that house, and just logs piled up everywhere, and then that boy getting sick and the job shutting down and then starting back up and the smell of all that old rotten bark and stuff. It's just a terrible deal. But that was absolutely the worst job I've ever been on in my life. Didn't make no money, and that's when I decided I'd better either find me something else to do or get out on my own. And I done one more job for that old guy, and it was a good job, but he cut the pay back on the stumpage so bad you couldn't make nothing on it. I think a tandem load of logs didn't bring $80 or something. It was just stupid. It was cheap. And then I started this logging for myself, and I later put the sawmill in. But when I started this thing, I didn't know what I was doing. Didn't have no idea. Trusted people that I shouldn't have ever trusted, and lost a small fortune. To me, it was a small fortune is all I had, and I'd build it up over a period of years. But I learned a valuable lesson right there. Don't never go in on a job somebody else has been on for. They cut the best first. Pretty much everybody does. And why he kept saying, well, why ain't you getting out more? You ought to be able to do more than that. My God was pulling it a mile with that dozer, and it's just a mess. It really was. And he got me, and he knowed he got me. More power to him. He's dead now, and I ain't gonna speak ill of the dead. But that old man was a sight. That was a tough job. And there was a boy working for me during that time, and he had cut timber in Indiana for 2 or 3 years. And he was a good timber cutter. He couldn't fail timber in any certain direction, wherever it was leanings where he would cut it. But he could put as many trees on the ground as anybody I've ever seen in my life. And he was also on crank, whatever this powder is, you know. And he's the only man that at that time he was the only dopehead I'd ever been around, for it was kind of new, and I'd never heard tell of meth before. And as long as he could get that in him, he done pretty good. But boy, if he couldn't get it in him, like if we had a slow week and it rained, the devil couldn't stand it. But he was working so hard, I was afraid he was going to have a heart attack. He'd pick up that timber cutting saw, and it was a big saw. It was as big as like a 395 Husky. It was a big Saxon-Omar. And he'd go to the top of that mountain and never stop. Never seen anybody could do that. And I hired this boy to help him trim. Victor, the new guy. And they headed out that morning. I could tell, the boy's name was Kevin. It was a timber cutter. I can't even remember his last name. But I could tell that there's something about him, but I didn't know what it was. And he thought that he wasn't doing enough or something or other. He took it as an insult that I got him some help. Well, he takes off up the mountain, and Victor takes off up through there. And I mean, he didn't stop. Victor couldn't make it. He just went as far as he could go, and he sat down to rest just a minute to catch his breath. And unbeknownst to Victor, Kevin would notch 4 or 5 trees and have them just ready to fall. I mean, pretty much cut. Just all I got to do is touch them with a saw. And when he got up there, as soon as he got there, he started that saw. Victor thought, well, it'll take him a few minutes to get one down. He laid 5 trees right down in there where Victor was at. And he knew Victor was down there, so wondered hadn't killed him. Busted my saw all to pieces. Victor come running down through there and said, that feller's crazy. He said, I ain't going back up there. Kevin come back down in just a minute. He had that wild-eyed look to him. And I fired him on the spot. I said, I can't put up with this. I said, you're going to kill yourself or somebody. I said, I was trying to be good to you, get you some help. Let me just take you back to your house. He's renting a place out there in Marsville. And I just shut the job down and took him home. And I think I let Victor go that day too. I hard some other nuthead probably. And it was just like something like that all the time on that job. It's crazy. But I ain't never worked as hard and made as little in my life. That was a tough job. They was rock cliffs in there 15, 20 foot high. And you'd have to build a road to every tree, and it's just bad logging. You couldn't. And they went about 2 or 3 ways down out there. I mean, logging straight now, if you can't run a dozer over a rock cliff, you'd be killed. We got it done. And I think I done started that other job, and they pulled me off of it. Pine, it got in the summer, and pine, he didn't want to cut more pine, they pulled me off of it. And when he did, I started the job out in Black Mountain. I never did go back. He called me 2 or 3 times and wanted me to finish that job. And he had kind of miffed at me because I didn't, but I wasn't going back. And the job, it wasn't fronted or nothing. Whoever finished it could go in there and start right where we stopped. I mean, it's a good job. I've had some tough times logging, and that was probably the worst one right there. Well, you could work all day there and couldn't get a tandem load of logs there. And the old man didn't pay hardly nothing for them. It was just bad. But that's my story on the worst job I ever had. Here in a few days I'll tell you it's about the best. And while I'm thinking about it, I got 100 subscribers. Thank every one of you. I never thought I'd have 100. A lot of these people wants to have up in the thousands and stuff, and I never did go about this with the intention of getting 2, much less 100. I'm surprised there's 100 people interested in what I've got to say. Every one of you, thank you. I'll catch you later. Bye.